Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for Justice Conversation, right here on Usala Radio. With
Hello, and welcome once again to Justice Conversations from the Ivory Tower to the Streets with your hosts, Dr. Brian O'Neill and Luis Suave Gonzalez. Here in the studio today, we're joined with Ed McGill, Philadelphia native and author. Actually, he's an author of young adult novels, Ed McGill. And Ed, this is your first publication, So Much Happy.
Yes, so much for happy, yes.
Now, how did you become a writer?
Um, when I was young, I always knew I wanted to be a writer. Then as I got older, I kind of drifted into some different things, and I found my way back to it. And I realized that, if you could reach kids in a way that educated and entertained them, then you could possibly instigate change. So I decided to write for young people.
Now, you are doing this kind of do-it-yourself project. You formed your own publishing company as well. Is that correct, Ed?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you've written, this is your first published book, but you've written a whole bunch of sequels yet to follow this one.
Yes, and then other accompanying books also, like spin-offs or books that cover other themes that I thought we need to speak to our children with that I didn't cover in this book.
Gotcha. So could you sort of give us a synopsis of what the book is about?
Okay, it's the year 2020, and I picked that year because, that's perfect vision, and I wanted us to start seeing things correctly. And there's three territories left in America, which is happy, unhappy, and hope, with hope being a state of mind. And despite there only being three places, everybody, no matter where they're at in life, is trying to get to hope. And I wrote it as it's a cautionary tale to, make kids, understand that, happy isn't material things. So it's kind of a double entendre name because in one sense, we do all these things in life, believing that we're doing it to get to happy, but we never achieve happiness because we don't truly understand what happy is.
And where do you envision promoting this book, or what audiences? I guess kids obviously, but you look at the school system, or
Yes, the school districts have been picking up the book. Baltimore just picked it up. It's in some Philadelphia school districts. In addition to the book, there's a teaching manual that I give with all of my books that you can either download via PDF or PowerPoint so that you can teach it in the class from a smartboard. And it expands on the themes of the book. Some of the things that I also wanted to do is I wanted to go into schools and work with the kids personally, where the kids would take my book and create a script of their own based of the book, and they would act it out. And if they wanted to be actors, they would act. If they wanted to be directors, they would direct. If they wanted to be artists, they would build the sets and so forth, just to try to get everybody into it. And into arts, because I do believe that you need to be able to be creative in some kind of way, or else you can kind of become stifled in life because you'd be frustrated not getting out energy that you need to let out.
sure, sure.
So, as a Philadelphia native, knowing all the violence that's going on around the city, where do you think your book and information fit in, and do you see your book, making it different in today's culture in our society in Philadelphia?
Absolutely. I wrote this book as a child growing up in Philadelphia in a time that I would believe that was more violent than today, because I grew up during JBM era, and there was a lot of Shower Posse, JBM, and Little Man, and all those. I mean, real wars. It wasn't like it is today. And I wrote this book wishing that I had someone speak to me in this way when I was that age, so I wouldn't have made some of the decisions that I made. The purpose of this book is to make our children aware of what they face. The main character in the book, his name is Christopher Michael. It starts with him being 12 years old, and it goes every year up to 21, and it shows what happens whether you take the wrong or the right way. So it's a cautionary tale. It teaches about everything. It teaches about race, but not only does it teach about race, but it teaches about the systems, both from external and internal, the systems that we create to kind of hold ourselves down also. So it gives a whole perspective of everything that we have to look forward into in life to hopefully when those things happen, you know at least how to try to properly create them, or not create them, but to deal with them.
So, Ed, you said regrettable decisions in your past. Did you have any brushes with the juvenile justice system?
No, I was. It's not that they didn't try to get me. It's just they weren't. They never were able to get me.
I understand.
So you never been in the system, period.
Once, but it was for. Ironically, it was a case I had absolutely nothing to do with. I hadn't been in Philadelphia in 3 years, and 20 minutes back in the city, I'm in jail, $1 million bail, mandatory 20-year minimum sentence. But I fought it, and those 6 cops that were going around robbing everybody, those were the cops, and that was my case. Was the case that kind of turned all that around because I fought. I wasn't going to just let them take my freedom for something I didn't do.
And who them cops may be?
I don't
if you don't mind,
Tom Liccardello and I can't remember the rest of them, but they wound up. One of the guys robbed a drug dealer and planted cocaine on him, then went and robbed his house for a bunch of pounds and money, and the guy that he made set the guy up was a federal informant, and the informant snitched on him, and then that's how that whole thing spiraled.
Okay. Now, were you in college at the time that happened?
No.
Okay.
No, I was. I had built a public aquarium in Martha's Vineyard that I was running.
I see.
And the business fell apart because of that, because I obviously I was on bail. I couldn't leave. It was very bad times.
So what would you say to somebody out there right now, struggling writers, that's trying to get their book out there, but don't have the resources or the platform to do so? Obviously you've done it. You got a book out. You've written 30 books. You're doing your thing. You got some books in the Baltimore school system and the Philadelphia school system. What do you tell somebody out there that's struggling with their book? What advice you would give them writers?
You only fail when you quit. And that's one of the things you have to learn in life. Everything else up until the point that you quit was learning lessons. I think Thomas Edison said he learned 2,000 ways how not to make the light bulb. And eventually, we have light. So, you just have to keep pushing. If this is something that you really want to do, then you go after it. And, the only thing or only person that can really stop anybody in this world is themselves.
So you're in Philadelphia. You based out of Philadelphia, right?
I live in New Jersey now, but yes.
Okay. But you're a Philly guy.
I'm Philly.
And right now we're seeing a lot of violence, young kids going to jail, young adults going to jail, people getting shot. What role do you think writing plays in telling that narrative?
I think that it's a two-part thing. I think that writing can tell the story. Story is how people survive, and I don't think that most people understand that. But the way that humans survive is by story. We learn things and we teach it through story, and as such, we've developed something in our bodies called mirror neurons, which if you read something, your body interprets it as if it's happened to us. So by reading these stories, we actually live these stories. And by writing these stories, we therapize if we live these stories. So, it helps us in many ways. In one way, if it was something that we wanted to do and we're considering it and we read this story, hopefully it'll teach us that there's other things that we can do. And from the other aspect, if we've been through it, it helps us to deal with it.
And how would you say your book, the perspective in your book, is unique in this genre of literature?
Well, what I tried to do is there's in addition to there only being 3 territories in America, happy, hope, and unhappy, there's also only 3 races of people, and that is red, white, and blue people, which is an allegory to the American flag. And it was also my way of trying to symbol how systems can change us into anything that we allow them to if we let them. So, I try to promote, critical thinking, being yourself at no matter the cost, and just doing things that you want to do in life according to what you want to do, hopefully not getting caught up in materialism or any of those other things that we tend to get caught up with that take our lives from us.
So what you say to people that accuse people like me, my style of writing? I heard lately that somebody told me, "Oh, but you perpetuating the violence that's taking place in our community," and I'm like, no, because I always tell people, y'all like James Patterson, right? And people, oh, we love James Patterson. I said, but nobody accused James Patterson of perpetuating the violence that's taken in our community. But when we see some of our writers in our community, they tell their stories and their narratives and they fashion. We always got to say, well, it's a hood novel. I don't read hood novels. Why can't it be that that brother or sister is just writing good fiction and telling their stories the way they see it in their community? What would your response be to people that say, well, they're not writing something that's going to change the culture?
I would disagree with that. I think that urban literature is as popular as it is because that's what people want to read. And I think that the goal right now is just getting people to read. And then, from there, maybe people's taste will expand into other things. Maybe they won't, but at least they're reading. What I would say that I would recommend in these urban messages is that, there be some caution in it. I think that a lot of rap today, doesn't tell children, the true consequences of the things that they perpetuate in their music. But I do think that, if the literature does, then, I think that I'm all for it. I mean, I'm actually getting ready to write a street book now also because I think it's necessary. But, as long as it's not just totally glorifying the street or just trying to get people into it, I think that, it's positive because, again, at the very core, you're getting people to read. And that's the most important thing in the world.
So, you hearing it here right now, man. To all the people that's listening to us out there on Facebook, man, I want you to look at the table, and this is the book, man. So Much for Happy. Support it, man. We need to start supporting each other, our writers, our small businesses in the community. We need to start supporting each other because we always talking about, well, he's just writing a book. He's just from down the block. No, he's one of us. He's telling our story. And if we don't have writers to tell the story the way it really happens in our neighborhoods, then all we're going to get is watered down stories and narratives. And we already know what happens when other people tell your narrative. It never ends up being the truth. It's always end up getting watered down. So what I'm suggesting to y'all, as soon as the show is over, by the end of the show, we're going to give y'all where y'all can get this book at, and put it in your library. Put it in your school, put it in your rec center and your daycares because it's that type of book. And you listening to a Justice Conversation on Usala Radio. We'll be right back. Shout out to Westchester University.
Don't wait. Communicate. Make your emergency plan today.
Welcome back to Justice Conversations with Dr. Brian O'Neill. And Luis Suave Gonzalez, along with Ed McGill, who's a Philadelphia-based writer, who specializes in young adult novels. And Ed's first big project, So Much for Happy. And Ed, I was wondering about, as far as the text of the book, how you try to capture real-life challenges in the book, as opposed to some children's books that might be, let us say, not so gritty.
Well, there's a lot of hard truths in this book.
Can you do us a favor and you can just like read something from the book?
Pick a passage.
A passage so the people
idea.
out there can see the type of level that you writing and the literature that's putting out.
Okay. Well, the book deals with a lot of things that I feel as though we have to worry about in society today as minorities. It deals with, the fact that, in my opinion, I think that, minorities are going to be pushed out of this system. It deals with the fact that, that major publishers are so certain that our existence is going to be nullified very soon, that they print articles stating that by 2053 the median income of the African American is going to be zero, and 10 years after that Spanish people are going to be zero, and it's my goal to try to make people understand that this can only happen if we allow it to. We spend 97% of our income with other people. None of those people spend anything with us unless they're buying drugs from us for the most part. And, we have to get back to, doing things for ourselves, or else we're going to die. We're coming up on the age where, automation, you go into the stores, it's self-checkout, you go pay a toll, it's easy pass. A lot of the jobs that we've done throughout this history, there's computers or apps or robots can do. So if we don't come together and start to create our own, we're going to get eaten, or we're going to be eating each other. And we have to understand, if you look at LA, LA is like the primer. Look at the homelessness. Look at how much it costs to live in San Francisco. Look at New York. 50% of the people that were native New Yorkers can no longer afford to live in New York. Look at Philadelphia. Philadelphia's, the same thing is happening. It's going to be everywhere in the world, and there's going to be a bunch of these homeless people. And then you have people that that are doing these impact studies on homelessness to try to figure out how to deal with what's going to become the homeless solution. And so this is my goal for us to try to get us together and to understand where we are, so that we don't perish. And it's very important. I think that when anybody else does it, it's okay. But when we do it, it's considered separatism. And I want us to do it no matter what anybody does or says or think, because it's important. We deserve a seat at the table, and then if we can't get a seat at the table, like Tyler Perry said, let's build our own tables.
Listen, this is what I keep telling y'all out there. Doing it yourself, it's a lot of hard work, but it's the best thing to do because you own it. And when you document your history in any book, that literature gonna live forever. It could be 10 years from now, and somebody could be reading your book.
Sure.
I could be gone tomorrow, but my books will still be in print. And if you don't believe that books could make a difference, then watch the movie Hurricane and how his freedom became about.
Sure.
16-round knockout. The young brother read the book, wrote him a letter, and then got some people involved that ultimately led for his freedom. And this is the power of books and words. So for me, being a writer myself and publishing my own books and distribute them, it's the best thing. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of hard work. I could easily go on Amazon and put my book out there, but I choose not to, because why would I want to give Amazon or any major company a percentage of my money when I could do it myself.
And control of your book.
And control of my literature. I don't have nobody saying, you can't put that out. We're going to censor you. I don't do that. And the writers that I do have on my label, I don't censor them. You know, that's why I got editors. That's why I got proofreaders, book covers, designers. They take care of that business. You know, but I don't think that nobody should doubt themselves if they could conduct their own business. Go for it.
And if I can interject, there's something that we have to understand about America, okay? And we see, you know, that America doesn't play with nobody in this world, okay? So everything that's happening in this world, in America specifically, is exactly what America wants, including but not limited to your undereducations, the way that you're living right now, and the possibility that it can only get worse. So, you know, we have to do for self, as if, you know, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad used to tell us, you know, and it's not, you know, being separatist or, you know, but if you're not going to do for you, who's going to do for you? You know, as parents, we have to understand that, you know, that the education of our children is not just the teacher's responsibility, and our children being at school is, you know, not just a time that we can relax and, you know, watch soap operas or whatever it is. You know, we got to get to work, because, you know, now is the most important times in our life, you know, despite the fact that we think that we have all these liberties and everything that we have, which are available, but we don't take advantage of them. So, you know, we have to go to work, and we have to get ourselves together, or all these reports that they're saying in 2053 are going to be true.
Explain to the people what going to work means. What do you mean by going to work? We have to go to work.
In my opinion, I think that we have to get back to where we used to be. I think that we need to start bartering. We need to do more business with each other. We need to create a lot more small businesses. I mean, even if you're religious people, I mean, listen to what the Bible said. The Bible said in the end, there's going to be one company that runs the world. We're almost there. You know what I mean? All these things that they've prophesied are really happening. And, you have to get to a point where you understand that, you know, all this control that you're giving up on your life, you know, if somebody decides that, you know, you don't exist anymore, you don't exist. And, you know, things are becoming virtual, money. You know, you can work and somebody can push a button and it's gone. All these things are getting ready to happen, and we're letting these things happen. And, you know, we have to be prepared for these things. We have to become autonomous. In my opinion, part of going to work is producing food, which I think is the most necessary thing. We have no infrastructure, none. So, you know, if war broke out tomorrow, we're going to be the first people to starve. We have to get ready.
So, Ed, can you find a passage in your book there to share with us?
Sure.
I know it might be tough to spur of the moment, but...
Okay, I'll start from the beginning.
Okay.
Year's 2020, reading in schools is kind of banned in this book. There's worksheets that they give you because, you know, that, you know, it's understood that education is key, even though it's not, you know, just the only component, but it's the major component. And we're in a place in the world now where there's like people are truly controlled. And like I said, there's three races of people. There's red, there's white, and there's blue people. But you could be of any race, even though you are those colors. It's just that you've been made into this with undereducation and chemicals, and again, it's an allegory for America. And I wanted to try to scare kids to make them understand that, you know, if somebody had the mindset, you know, to expand, say, what Donald Trump is doing right now, we could very easily be in this situation. So I'll start. Everybody stand up, Mrs. Trapp says to her class full of 12-year-olds. Nobody moves. They are too busy poking each other, trading snacks out their backpacks, or staring out the window. Just another typical morning in class number 6 at the Chris and Carl Koch Elementary Training Center, formerly known as Public School Number 1. Christopher Michael, also known as CM, has his head poked inside a book, which is quite typical for him, except that this book is hidden underneath a worksheet he is supposed to be completing. He doesn't want anybody to see he's reading a book, in this case one of his favorites, Big Brother from Another Mother. I said get up now, Miss Trapp repeats. Everybody stand up and pledge. Miss Trapp is a short, lean woman with neatly cropped graying hair and half-rimmed glasses. She favors wearing sweaters she no doubt knits herself and wraps around her shoulders like a cape, tied around her neck by the sleeves. When she speaks, children listens. Maybe that's because red children, like the 47 cramped into Miss Trapp's class, always end up listening to blues as in authority figures like Miss Trapp. At least they're supposed to. Christopher Michael, you lead the pledge, Miss Trapp says. Get up here and do it. As CM scrambles to his feet, all 4'11" of him, he holds his worksheet carefully in place to make sure that he hides the book he is reading. On second thought, he quickly stuffs it in his backpack, afraid to take any chances. CM knows that getting caught reading a forbidding book is a serious offense. Christopher Michael, Miss Trapp snaps. What are you waiting for? The class just stares at CM as he makes his way to the front of the classroom. None of the children budge as he walks up the aisle and takes his place next to Miss Trapp, who is barely an inch taller than him, if even that. In fact, CM is the only kid in her class who is shorter than Mrs. Trapp. Maybe that's why she likes him. She nods, signaling him to begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag, Christopher Michael says. The entire class repeats the line, mumbling whatever comes out of their mouth that resembles those 6 sacred words. No one thinks about whether they really mean it, but they say those words just the same. Very good, says Mrs. Trapp, saluting the flag. You can all sit down now. You want me to keep going?
No, that's good, man. That's good. As you see, people, it's beautifully written.
Thank you.
And I think it's a book that everybody out there should support because this is the type of literature we need in our schools. You know, written by our people for our kids.
Is one of those groups a minority? The red, the white, or the blue?
The red and the blues are the minority. The red being the bottom class, the blue being the middle class, and white being upper class. But reds can become blues, depending on how you're willing to sell out your people or how educated you become. And then there's this rare form of people also, which are purple, which I added, but it's so rare that there's actually only one so far. And I got that idea from the purple states in America, where they're neither red nor blue, depending on, where they're leaning at. So I added that also because I wanted this to be a lot of allegories of America.
Sure.
And I wanted to teach kids about America, the America that they don't understand, because, there's a lot of things that we're taught about America and we're continuing to be taught. Like, for example, in Texas, the textbooks are calling slaves non-voluntary workers, which is an oxymoron in itself. I don't know what that means, but they're starting to dilute slavery and everything else. So, again, Suave, his point is perfect, that, if we don't tell our stories, who knows what of our stories you're going to get, if anything.
And you heard it here on a Justice Conversation on Usala Radio.
What do you think you're doing, Kevin?
Was just gonna drive home.
There are several warning signs present that you shouldn't be driving.
Like hearing voices?
Like your text-to-emoji ratio?
Oh man, the selfies.
Selfie nailed it.
We all have warning signs that let us know that we're probably not okay to drive. Mine is pretending to be your subconscious.
Craig, come on man, let's split a ride home.
Sometimes the things we do or say can make others feel hurt, excluded, or isolated. Everything you say and do creates an impact.
How am I supposed to save the whole world?
You can't think about saving the world. You have to think about saving one person.
Because of you, someone's entire life can change. You don't have to be a superhero to have a positive impact.
Friends?
Friends. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
Welcome back to Justice Conversations from the Ivory Tower to the Streets. Dr. Brian O'Neill and Luis Suave Gonzalez, and our guest today, Ed McGill, a Philadelphia-based writer, specializes in novels for young adults. One of the things you're talking about, educational system, which is obviously figures very heavily in your novel, Ed, and you hear teachers today talking about this in Pennsylvania and about other states, that they get frustrated with the curriculum because they're forced to teach to a particular test, which is an evaluative tool that all the students have to take. And that tool is used to judge the quality of the teaching.
Right.
And so a lot of things have been eliminated, and things have suffered, like arts and outside recreation time, things of that nature, because they take away from that teaching to the test kind of rigid format. And it's not as if teachers have jumped on board with this. They've been sort of forced into this square. There's a little bit of resistance now coming from authorities, but it's still a law of the land, I understand.
Mm-hmm.
So I wondered if your book sort of attempts to capture some of the frustration teachers have.
Absolutely, absolutely. And more importantly, some of the frustrations that the students have once they become adults and feel as though that they haven't really learned anything through their education. In my opinion, education today is more rote, and I would say it's more training than education. I mean, especially in Philadelphia. And, this is one of the things that I've actually written about in my adult books, that, if there truly is inclusion and equal opportunity for all, then, the quality of an education should not depend on the taxes that city is taking in. It should be something that's pooled and distributed equally, and so that everybody can get a fair education. I live in New Jersey now. One of the reasons that I moved to New Jersey is because when I became a father, I wanted to make sure that my children could receive the best educations that they have. And 20 minutes from Philadelphia, you have public schools that are some of the best in the country, at least in the top 5. And depending on what your needs or your strengths of your child is, you can move to different neighborhoods in New Jersey and be able to get your child exactly what that child needs so that it'll excel. And you have, where most people, you have 85% people from New Jersey schools graduate college, as opposed to less than 50 from Philadelphia graduating high school. And I think that that's all based on the amount of education that you give, and more importantly, the amount of care that's given to the education. Because, a lot of our teachers here in Philadelphia are overworked. They're frustrated. They have to use a lot of their pay to buy supplies that should be there. The kids can't drink the water, or there's so many determining factors that ruin what is the most important time in children's life, and that is the way that that they learn and how they learn, and whether or not they want to learn. We started out as a people where it was illegal to read, and then we became some of the most educated people, and now we're back to almost where we don't care or value education anymore. And we have to understand that is the basis for survival, and not just so much as to get a job, but to also to be able to continue your species.
So let me ask you this. Do you think that the quality of education that our children are receiving in the public schools in Philadelphia is by design, or do you think that we need to fire our current, or some of our current teachers, and just bring a whole new load of people? Because when I compare public schools to charter schools, I know some charter schools that are like wonderful.
Well, I think,
compared to public schools,
I think that when you understand where public schooling came from, public school began with a $100 million endowment from John D. Rockefeller. Okay, so and his goal although it was promoted that he was trying to educate everybody, was not to educate everybody. What he wanted was he wanted workers that didn't ask questions. So, and at the time of John D. Rockefeller's reign, Americans were very intelligent, and they were very contextually intelligent, more importantly. You read as a hobby. There wasn't cable and social media and all these things that we have today. You did math problems as a hobby. And so, we had very smart people, and smart people questioned things, and they didn't want that. So he created the public school system, and at the same time, it became legal. You had to go, and if you didn't go, your parents could be arrested. And this is where you see the decline of the contextual intelligence of America. And so to answer your question, I don't think that the thing has to do with teachers, but more so the system. And I think that the system needs to be revamped, and I think that it needs to be done properly. I mean, you look at other countries in the world that educate their children. We were number one, and I think we're now 48. I mean, that's and as I said before, America gets exactly what it pays for, and if it doesn't, it puts its gloves on and ties its boots. So America is happy with what it's getting right now.
Well, you guys might remember back in 2015, an Atlanta jury convicted 11 teachers of racketeering and other crimes and a standardized test cheating scandal in which the teachers altered the test scores to correct scores because they were in fear that their performance would not be reflected in those test scores, and they would be penalized for not reaching certain goals. Some even risked termination if they didn't reach those goals.
Sure.
So they actually went in physically changed the scores, and they discovered this might have happened in many other places in the country.
So my question to you is more directly: do you think that the Philadelphia school system is failing our kids?
Yes, but I don't think that it's just their responsibility. Also, I think that our parents have to be more involved with our kids' education. I understand that we all got to get money. I understand at the times that we live in, but we have to also understand that look at how many extremely wealthy people that are broke today because money isn't enough. You have to build infrastructure. You have to build education. You have to know how to maintain the money once you get it. And, it all comes down to educating yourself. And the basis of it is even if our children were just readers, that would make us so much more intelligent than if we weren't reading. So, that's another reason why what you're doing is so important, because you're putting out media that is directly appealing to people who otherwise don't want to read. And it all comes down to reading. Everything, the basis of everything. You think about law and all this stuff and the hammers that these people can drop. It all comes down to a pen, or grammar, or punctuation, or a word, and an understanding of a word. And so, yes, it's the most important thing that we have to do. I do think that, that our system does not intend to properly educate our kids. The proof of which is that, we're building more jails for kids than schools today. I mean, if it was truly about education, our children would be educated.
We're seeing a lot of kids also get to college and being ill-prepared.
Absolutely.
They may get into the college, but they're not really academically ready for the work.
Sure.
So
they struggle greatly.
So as a writer, what role do you think you play in our community and society?
Well, my goal is to make our children critical thinkers, to make us readers. One of the reasons that John D. Rockefeller had so many problems with people was because these people read. They understood things. They understood language. You understand? The vocabulary of people back then was double what it is today. And that's before the emojis and all these. I mean, if you look at how we're everything that we're doing is taking language away from us. We're almost back to hieroglyphs. You know what I'm saying? So if it's ridiculous. And that in itself also shows the importance of what this understanding is. I mean, I can write a sentence in the way I punctuate it. I can cheat you out of your life and you'd never know it. We have to be able to understand that. And the only way that we can do that is by being contextually intelligent, and more so than not just this rote memory. You could teach a kid that an arrangement of letters, equals a word. DOG spells dog. But do you see the definition of dog, and do you learn how to, or can you immediately use it in different contexts? And that's what we're trying to get.
Yeah, I see college students writing like they text.
Sure.
Because they haven't had enough practice, quite frankly. And they've done a lot more texting in their lives than they have written any kind of papers or formal communication process.
And the language that they have right now is not even a language. I can't read text. I don't understand it.
Right.
I write everything out when I text, and I have to constantly ask somebody what it is that you mean. Another thing that we do is that we don't speak universally. We understand what it is that we're saying or thinking, but we don't know how to communicate it in a way that everybody will understand what we're thinking. Mm-hmm. And my opinion also, as far as being truly literate and having contextual intelligence, is that it would make the world a lot less violent place. Violence is the language of people who cannot express how they feel. If you have a baby, right, and this baby is trying to tell you something, it gets mad, it may bite you or it may hit you. It's because it cannot say what it feels. It's the same with adults. It's the same. And being able to express your feelings and to be able to say what you mean is very powerful, and it's therapeutic. And I think that if a lot of people could do that, the world would be a lot less violent.
That's why, but you can speak from personal experience because you came from a spot of not reading and writing.
Well, to me, when I was in prison, I went to prison with an IQ of 56. So I didn't know how to read or write. I learned how to read and write in prison. And that was like the best thing that ever happened because it opened up a world of possibility. And then writing my first 3 books in prison and getting them published was like, wow, I could really do this. And I used to see guys walking up and down the block with my book under their arms. And when you see people reading words that you put on paper, you went from writing them on scrap paper to putting them in a book and somebody's buying them to read them and passing the book all around. That's like a joyful feeling because, like he said, you're getting people to read. These are people that otherwise would not read. I know people that do not read anything but reality books.
Can't pay them to read. I offer kids $500 to read my book, and they told me no.
Right.
So when I get people saying, "Oh, you writing violent stuff," I'm like, "No, I'm writing what's going on in our community." Just 2 days ago, where I work at, one of the guys they play in the church, a drummer, just got shot 8 times. They shot his car up 40 times. That's the kind of stories I want to write. It's okay for the news to put it out, but it's not okay for me to put it out. And the only reason it's not okay for me to put it out because I'm a minority with a small business trying to make it happen. And we so used to seeing if it don't come from XYZ, the big names, then it can't be good. Why can't I be compared? I believe that some of my books are even way better than James Patterson.
Sure.
On that level. James Patterson don't really write them books.
No.
James Patterson buy manuscripts from people in the prisons and just put his name on it. And we all think he wrote them books. No, James Patterson write hood novels. But we don't call that hood novel, we call it fiction. Because he's James Patterson. So I always tell people, don't put me in that box. I'm a writer, period. The same way I could write a hood story, I could write a real educational story because I've done it before. So, but to me, writing, man, is freedom. If it wasn't for writing, I probably would not be where I'm at today.
Sure.
And life, period. Mm-hmm. So to me, writing is the world, man. Educational information. When you're able to get information and retain it and share it with people, it's the most beautiful thing in the world. And we going on a commercial break, people, because this thing is getting heated right now. You listening to a Justice Conversation on Usala Radio.
I'd like to expand on something that you...
They call me Maxie, but I prefer tripod. I was your above-average four-legged homie, and then wham, bam, minivan. Some people pity me. Now that's lame. I still run, fetch, and swim. And the ladies love me. I'm the ultimate wingman. Just don't ask me to high five.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. I have a mentor, and she convinced me to continue my education.
No one receives a diploma alone.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
Welcome back to Justice Conversations from the Ivory Tower of the Street with Dr. Brian O'Neill, Luis Suave Gonzalez, and our guest today, Ed McGill, an author from Philadelphia. And we were talking about Suave's story a little bit. And Suave, of course, was shortchanged quite a bit. The school system believed he was almost intellectually dysfunctional. And of course, he ended up earning a degree while he was in prison. And I met him as I was teaching a class in prison, a college class. And I never would have guessed anything about such a diagnosis. So I was curious how you were able to get out of that mind frame or that mindset of latching onto a label somebody gave you and believing it was legitimate, how you were able to break the mold and say, well, that was ridiculous. That's not who I was.
I mean, because to me, it was people like, hey, that's like, they lying. You could be better. It was people like him that picked up a dictionary and said, come on, I'm going to show you how to read. And really, I never believed in that label. I never believed it because I know that the school system in New York and Philadelphia at that time was done. They were just putting me in grades to get me out of school. No teacher ever sat me down and said, do you want to learn how to read? They always like, shut up. I always was in special ed classes. And back then, it was like you go to school, you stay still, you shut up, and they pass you. So when I go to prison, I never believed that label. I knew I could do better. And what I did, I just started, forcing myself. I said, I'm going to show all them people that label me, that say I couldn't read, I'm going to show them that I could be, not only can I read, but can I write. And I wrote. And at the beginning, it wasn't like I was writing masterpieces, but I was writing. I went from not reading nothing to writing my own books, to publishing my own books and owning the company. So, so what I'm saying to the people out there, don't believe the hype. If you want to do it, you could do it.
Sure. And let's break it down what an IQ is. It's an intelligence quotient, okay? And what it is, it was something that somebody put together to try to test people so that you could either be awarded or denied certain things, albeit college education for the most part. What you have to understand about an intelligence quotient, especially if you're somebody from the streets or, the ghetto or whatever what they would call it, is that more than half of it is going to be in almost a foreign language to you, because they've done studies, and they do. America does impact studies on everything. Okay, America, if you want to open up a business, you have to spend money to figure out how that's going to change traffic on the street that you're going to be on. So there's nothing that's happening in this country that it doesn't fully understand. Okay, and so what happens is that they give you these tests, and they test your intelligence, so to say, based on something that you have no understanding of. So they might as well have given it to you in Chinese. They've done studies where kids in New Jersey schools have 1,000 more words in their vocabulary by third grade than Philadelphia schools. So, of course, a kid from a New Jersey school is going to score higher on their intelligence quotient than somebody would from Philadelphia because they're exposed to more language. I went to school in Philadelphia. I don't ever remember having to read a book. Ever. I think in, my senior year in high school, we had to read Of Mice and Men. I read it. I fell in love. Luckily, it changed my life. But I never had to read a book before then. And if you're not exposed to words where, and more importantly, when you read, you get a dictionary, and the words you don't know, you define those words and you go about that. And if you don't have a true passion to want to understand this language, you're going to get eaten. So, IQ is something that I don't believe in IQ. You have people out here that are illiterate geniuses, but they just never have been properly trained. And you have people that have doctorates that are idiots. I mean, so it goes both ways.
So, like I said, neither do I. I don't believe in IQs. But I do refer to that, right, to make a point that just because somebody placed a label on you, don't mean that you are that thing that they say you are.
Listen, having done everything that you've done in the time that you've become a writer and a publisher, if you were re-given that equivalent, that intelligence quotient, you'd score probably above 120, maybe 140, which is where they consider genius. You'd be able to go to Mensa, So it's a scam, in my opinion, that's used to deny certain people certain things so that they can't get anywhere in life.
Mm-hmm. No question about
it. And that's the way I look at some of these writers, man, that's writing these stories, man, that's based on real, true stories. A lot of them are real, true stories they happen. I look at them as genius, man, because it takes not only time, but it takes heart to sit down and create a story that will engage millions of people in your words. That means you bringing millions of people into your world every time somebody is reading your book. They in your world now. You controlling them. So my questions to you is, do you think as writers, do we have an obligation on the kind of information we put out, whether it's fiction or nonfiction?
Absolutely. I think that my company is We Edutainment, and I want there to be an educational component to everything that I do while educating you. They say that, the best educations are the ones that we don't even realize that we get. And, most movies teach us stuff. And we have to learn that, what not to do is as important, if not, than what is to do. So, yeah, I would like there to be an educational component to everything that we do, even if it's teaching somebody, what not to do if you are thinking about going into the streets, because, let's face it, one of the biggest things that most poor people feel is hunger. And that's what drives most of us to do things that we wouldn't have done under normal circumstances. And, we have to get to a point where we don't feel that anymore. And if we can, make our own food, that'll limit that also. So, yes, we have a very big responsibility. We have a responsibility as people who understand what's going on in our surroundings to teach it, so that everybody has a true understanding of what they're experiencing and going through. Because, one of the things that I talk about in this book also is the kids are given glasses, and the glasses show everybody their true colors. So you have all these red kids that were friends on Monday, and Tuesday they come to school with glasses and they see, oh man, Suave, you're Puerto Rican. Oh man, Ed, you're black. Oh man, you're white. Now they all hate each other. You know what I'm saying? And it's to talk about perception, because, most people don't perceive things correctly. And, a lot of that has to do with, also an ability to read and an education.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I'm teaching a class, you're talking about making the education part of a story or an entertainment. I don't just rely on a textbook, because facing it in textbooks is usually pretty dry.
Sure.
And rather tedious. And students will admit they don't read them unless you force them,
Sure.
to take a test on something. But the books and the other supplemental stuff, like Nathan McCall's Make Me Want to Holler, or the book about Frank Mink, autobiography of a recovering skinhead, which are real but very gritty, those books read themselves. I mean, the students, you don't have to tell them that read ahead. They're done with the book before, it's not something I have to pull teeth to get them to talk about.
But why do you think is that?
Well, they present, it's a story format, and it's true. And not just, you're talking about theory of learning, but you're seeing that theory played out in a real story. So it's like a case example of what a theory would be in the textbook.
Right.
So it's much more vivid. It's much more, you can connect with it.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about how somebody becomes filled with hate, like Frank Mink was. You can look at his whole trajectory in Philadelphia as a child and his abandonment and all the stuff he went through and see how he got introduced to this at the right place and the right time. And he connected to it.
Sure.
He needed empowerment.
But that's the same thing when you read these novels.
Right.
You start seeing how a person go from being poor into ghetto rich, into a lifestyle that they never thought they could have. And you could see the process. And this is why I always tell people, read the book before you judge it. Don't let the covers fool you. I know a lot of novels that's written by brothers incarcerated. They are now in different colleges. A lot of them. Because I tell you what, if I get to change the book cover on this book, and tell you it's just a nonfiction book, you will buy it and read it. And you will fall in love with it because it's about sex trafficking. But it's in a gritty. Check it out, people. I'm promoting, yes. Gritty way. People judge it. And I think it's wrong.
I wrote a nonfiction book, and my opinion was that, who am I to publish a nonfiction book right now, which is why I wanted to wait till later in, success and to publish it. But and it's a book about where I took my turn from where I wanted to go in life, which was to be a marine biologist, and went to the streets. And the name of that book is called When Flying Feels Like Falling. When Falling Feels Like Flying. And it talks about how easily we fall into these traps. And I speak from my point of view, which was terrified. I was totally afraid. My mom ingrained in me the streets because, she knew what was coming. So and despite how fear-filled I was, I did it because more than being afraid, I was hungry. So, and it wasn't a literal hungry. It was, a materialistic hunger. It was, us growing up being one of the poorer families in our neighborhood and not being able to get the Jordan sneakers and being laughed at because of that, or because my mom cut her hair, and so it grew to where you go out and you do something that you're terrified of doing, and then it gets to a point where you become a monster. And the only way to stop that monster is, if the system or a bullet stops it. And luckily with me, I just came to a point in my life where I realized that, wow, this is something really huge that I'm a part of, even though I'm an infinitesimal part of it. How's it illegal? It can't be, you know what I mean? And it's illegal for me. It's not illegal. And I decided that I'm not going to be anybody's pawn anymore. I'm going to try to do something different with my life.
So we got about a minute left. I want you to look into the cameras, right? And tell the people why they should support your book. Here you go.
If you're a parent, you should want your kids to be able to have an understanding of society and what they're going to encounter in life, and to be prepared for it. So that, when they do encounter these things, it's not the first time that it's happened. Their mirror neurons are firing. They've kind of experienced it because they've read it, and they'll be better prepared to handle the situation. Some of the things that we do as African Americans and minorities is we don't try to fix things until we're in trouble. Smart people, hire lawyers so that they can, bend the law until it breaks. We don't hire lawyers until everything's broken. And I'm trying to change that.
Where can they find your book at?
www.somuchforhappy.org.
Yo, And like again, I just want to send a shout out to all the local writers out there. If you have a book that you want to talk about, inbox me. We bring you on this show. Shout out to Linda Williams. Again, you the best in the game. DeJervis Jones, support her book. Yo, it's out now on Disobey Publication. Shout out to the boy Life in North Carolina. He got a trilogy out. It's called The Gain of Deceit. Shout out to my man here, Ed McGill. Hopefully, we got some good things coming. He might be on Disobey in a minute. Who knows? Stay tuned, right? But again, to all the writers out there, man, keep on writing, keep telling our stories, man. We are the voice for those in prison, for those that can't speak. We telling them stories. Our success is their success, and we are successful because the people that support us, keep us on the ground and don't let us forget where we come from. So shout out to everybody, especially to our sponsors of this show, Westchester University. And if you heard it here first, then you know it's official. You're listening to a Justice Conversation on Usala Radio. Again, we see you next week. And one more time, so much for having. Cop the ball.
Thank you.
Thanks again to our producer, Edwin. Our music is by Moby. Thanks again, Ed McGill.
My pleasure. Thank you for having
See you
me.
next week, folks.
Keep talking to the camera. That's all.